Hey everyone, welcome to the Product Pivot. I'm Santi and I'm here with my wonderful co-host Meagan. Meagan's going to say hi.
Hey y'all.
In this episode, guys, we're going to be covering mine and Meagan's own pivot into product, as well as how this podcast even came to be. So we'll dig into our own stories and the nitty-gritty of building the product pivot.
I feel like just how we got to meet through LinkedIn and how we just found this crazy connection of wanting to start our own podcast. My struggles of trying to niche down a podcast, your struggles of trying to find a co-host, and our synergies of coming together. And I just am super stoked to talk about it.
I love that. I'm excited as well. So maybe to kick things off, what we can do is, Meagan, if you want to go ahead and share a little bit about your journey, your background, leading up to where you are today, and then I can go ahead and jump in with my story.
Yeah, sounds great. So a little bit about my background. So I come from a customer success background. So my background is definitely more in like CS. Customer support is where I started out. So I entered SaaS in 2019. That was my first SaaS job. It was at a small startup. I worked there for about 6 months and then they ended up doing layoffs. Yay, common SaaS trend, there's layoffs. Had my first layoff. And then after that layoff, I was out of work for about like 8 to 9 months because I was really picky about what I was looking for. I had been working remotely for about a year and a half already. And I was like diehard remote worker. I did not want any type of in-office role. And like COVID started to begin because it was 2020. And so it was like even more diehard need of a remote role. So I was looking for specific types of roles. And then late 2020, I came across my favorite SaaS role that I've ever had, which was a customer support role at Demio. And I kind of got my like foot in the door into a real SaaS company there. It was completely bootstrapped, which I was super excited about. It was just the two co-founders. It was a small organization. There's like 20, 25 people. And I feel like that was my first experience of like MRR and ARR and revenue goals and customer experience. I was on the phone with the CEO all the time. And I was like, wow, this is what a real small early stage startup looks like. And from there, I really just got little bits and pieces of what working in product looks like. And I started getting like interested in it, but I stayed in this small startup culture. And so every company that I worked at after that, it was small startup. And that's all I wanted because I got to work in like all these little departments because I kept working my way up. And I think that the last company that I worked at before where I'm at now was my first real experience working as a PM. And so I finally kind of worked my way over from being in this like multi-threaded marketing CS product role over to being like manager of our CS team / founding PM. And so I kind of got to do like, hey, I'll manage your CS team, but I'm going to be our product manager too. And that was kind of how I convinced them to let me do both because it was what I was interested in, but it also serviced a need that they had. And because I had the experience, I was able to do that, but also service that need in product. And that was my first like real experience of getting excited by being a founding PM. And so towards like, I'll say almost a year and a half into that role, I was like, that's what I really want to just like do and only do. And unfortunately, that company didn't have the sole need for a PM. So I moved on, and where I'm at now, I'm in a founding PM role and I'm loving it. So I think really how I got started was just like dipping my toe. And so I finally jumped in head first and I'm in the water and I'm not drowning, which is good.
I love it. I know we always picture when it's like, oh, I jumped in head first. We always picture like oh, wait, I'm in here. But it's not always the case. That doesn't always happen. It's okay if it does, but it doesn't always happen. Totally. So I love that.
Yeah, it's been a good experience. And I think I've met a lot of really exciting people that have mentored me and taken time to like really educate me. And most importantly, I have to call out Casey Corvino from Lavender, was our CTO over there. And I have to give a big shout out to him because he took the time to really mentor me during my time there, taking time to like just pause and explain things and really nurture and teach. And being the busiest person at that startup, he didn't have time to do that. And he did. And I will forever be grateful for him helping me just like find what I'm passionate about. And I think that that's just something that you kind of need in order to pivot into product. You need some sort of mentor or someone to take time for you. And I'm glad that I had that.
It's crucial. I had a mindset in my earlier career days where I felt like if I couldn't do everything myself, I was not doing well. And that is a very easy mindset to fall into, but it's a very toxic one. And in my years, especially in more recent years, I've come to truly love and seek mentorship and provide it to others too, because I cannot stress enough how crucial it is for our own journeys, our growth, and eventually for us to give back. And I'm so glad that you had that, because it really does have such an impact on who we are, what we do, and how we do it. I cannot speak to mentorship enough. I'm so glad you had such a strong mentor that was able to do that for you.
I'm curious because like you kind of brought this up. What did feedback feel like for you early in your career?
Oh man, like a knife, to be honest. I'll get into my journey in a second here, but I do want to answer that question in a way, because myself, like many others, and kind of like a byproduct of like the society we're in, perfectionism is almost like the goal, even though it really shouldn't be. And I shouldn't say it's the goal, but it's kind of idolized in some ways. So you know, many folks have the tendency to want to be seen as like the best, or super powerful in what they do and all knowing. They want to be good at what they do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when that kind of mindset or that kind of way of wanting to be takes over, feedback can be really hard to hear, because everything feels like as soon as you hear it, it's like right to the heart, and you're like, oh, I'm not the best at what I do, or oh, I'm not doing a good job. It's one of those things where it just takes a really hard pivot downwards. You spiral a little bit for some folks. I was one of those folks earlier in my career, because like I said, I want to be the best at what I do. So when I heard things where I could improve, I felt like, oh my gosh, I suck at everything. And that was so far removed from the truth, but it's just how some of our minds work. And so I've made a very conscious effort over the years to look at feedback as a good thing. It can still hurt sometimes. I'm not going to take away from the fact they can still be like, oh crap, that does suck. I was talking about this with my friend earlier. The prideful side of me will be hurt, but the learner side of me will love it, because I will want to learn, and I will want to grow, and I will want to do better. And I get that through feedback, and I try to action the feedback I get right away. So that's kind of how it's been for me. It's definitely not like a straight cut journey into capitalizing on feedback, but it's definitely possible and definitely a worthwhile adventure, in my opinion.
No, I think that's great. The reason I asked that question is because some of what you initially said stood out to me. It's because I used to look at feedback as just like a personal attack.
Yeah.
When someone would give me feedback, I would be like, what's wrong with me? And why are you coming at me? I am trying everything I can to be good, and you're coming at me with like this negative emotion and negative words. And I was literally just sitting this morning on my couch, and I had to reinforce with myself that feedback isn't designed to give you any negative emotions, and it's not designed to make you worse or make you feel bad, but it's designed to make you better. Yep. And someone is taking time out of their day to help make you better. And so I think that I'm constantly, even in my like daily state, still reinforcing something that I've had to teach myself over the course of my career. Yeah. Because early on, and I'm talking like in my 20s, early 20s, I had to just get over this personal attack feeling. I mean, I'm 32 and I'm still having to reinforce this sitting down on my couch this morning, that someone is taking time out of their day to help you improve. Yeah. And that's what feedback is. Yeah. So that's why I asked that question, is because I felt that from you when you were talking a little bit there, is that you might have had a similar journey. Yeah. And let's pivot to your journey.
Speaking of journeys, I will share my journey as well, because what you said, especially in the early 20s part, we have a lot of stuff going on in the early 20s, right? And a lot of feelings. So I came from a very, very non-traditional background into the SaaS scene. I actually come from retail management. And whenever folks reach out to me and they ask me about my journey into product, I always make it a point to tell them I don't have a university degree, because even to this day, it's a little bit different now, but even to this day, there still is a bit of a stigma around folks that don't have a degree, at least from my own experiences and things that I've seen. It's so much better now, and it's actually like dissipated quite a bit. But there is always still just kind of that little bit of that's a bit of a talking point. So I like to make that known. So I come from a retail management background. I started in the management track very, very young. I was only 19 years old when I became a manager. And I was thinking to myself one day, I like what I do. I take a lot of pride in what I do, but I knew deep in my heart, I did not want to stay in that line of work. So a friend of mine, actually, she was like, is Santi looking for a new job? And she asked my husband this because they were neighbors at the time. And he was like, actually, yeah. And so she and I connected, and she was like, yeah, I'm doing my co-op at a local tech startup. They're looking for their first ever customer support coordinator. And she was like, you'd be perfect. My first reaction was like, thank you so much. Also, sister, I have zero tech experience. Nada. When I went to high school, one of the requirements in Canada to graduate high school is to have 2 tech courses, or you could do extra math and science. I did extra math and science. So
keep me away from the tech.
I was like, I have not a single interest in tech right now, when I was in school at least anyway. So I thought to myself, though, Santi, you have goals. Your goals is to get out of customer service and retail. So this would be worthwhile to explore. So I did the interview and was very, very thankful to get the job. So I was the first ever customer support coordinator. And early-ish, probably about a year in, I understood more about what product did and things like that. And I kind of knew in my heart I wanted to explore that more. But I continued to just work on the CX path. So I was the customer support coordinator, kind of like you, Meagan, where you like dipped your toes and got into different things. I did the same. I did customer support. I became the customer experience lead. And that's when I actually got my first really big, a little more than a dip. It was like a little, like, ooh, into a little more of the technical side of the SaaS company that I was with. And I actually started joining developers in their backlog groomings and being kind of like the voice of the customer in those meetings, which was great. It was funny too, because I still did customer support things, but in my role, I was very good at finding bugs in the platform. So eventually the QA manager at the time, he came to me and he was like, you should join QA. And it was so funny because this is where everyone starts to be like, oh, okay, that took a turn we didn't see coming. And I eventually did join QA though, and worked on a dev team for a while as their QA analyst and team lead. So I had a partner with me and we just crushed it, if I on humble break here, but we were really good together and we did a lot of really great things on the QA side. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I knew my heart was still very curious about product. I wanted to dive in a little bit. So I did a product specialization program through the University of Alberta. And after I did that, that's when I officially joined as the associate product manager with my company at the time. And then eventually I became their only PM. And so I had done that for quite some time. And what I really like about the journey is the main thing being I got to dip my toes in these different spaces, like these different teams. And I realized that even from day one, I was doing aspects of product right from the beginning. I just didn't realize it until I actually got into product. And then everything came full circle. So I saw the frontline customer support need of what customers want and what they need to do in their jobs to be done. I saw the back end side of the quality, what goes into building these products, how quickly something can go awry if it's not done right.
Yeah, for sure.
And I got a really good technical sense from that, which has helped me in my career. And then becoming the only PM. That helped me in many ways because I was able to learn on my own, kind of on the fly, as much as I could, but also just hone in and continue to drive things forward. So now I work with the team, which is fantastic because I get so much insight and guidance and mentorship from the others around me and working with people. But that was my journey, very long-winded, but it shapes up to be a really big part of who I am as a product manager and how I do things as a product manager.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think that just listening to your journey, the thing that stands out to me, because I relate to it, is just the CX experience.
Right.
Because I think we've talked about this already with some fellow PMs, but the background of having CX or CS experience really allows you to empathize. And I think that having that empathy as a PM is so crucial.
Yeah.
Like it's so crucial.
Yeah.
So just to give some context, I've done a lot of interviewing for a head of product role or like a senior leadership role in the product space when I was at Lavender, because we were looking for that. And I was a PM there. So I was part of that interview loop, like more of a screener, definitely not going to be a deciding person there because that's more of a leadership piece.
Right.
But I was doing some screeners there, right?
Yeah.
And during part of that screening process, I definitely could tell the difference between the user focused and empathetic head of product type leaders in that space and those who just had been conditioned to the strategic business focused mindset. I don't know if it's just a the background of being in CX or whether or not it's just the time in the system, however you want to describe that.
Right.
It's so crucial as a PM, as like anyone in a product role, to just empathize with your user.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like in your experience working with leaders in the product space, whether or not that's still crucial in that role, but it's something that I've experienced, like just encountering them.
Absolutely. It definitely is still crucial, right? And it's a bit of both. You do need to have that strategic business mindset, right? Because at the end of the day, our job's to help make the company money, right? So
True.
it's what we do. But I have found that digging into even just like a simple exercise of being like, okay, here's a piece of feedback I got from a customer. Let me pretend that I'm that customer. So for my company, I'll pretend that I'm an analyst and I will be like, okay, here's the use case that I have. What am I trying to do? Where could this get frustrating? Quite literally just putting ourselves in the shoe of the customer and in the seat of the customer and trying to do what they're trying to do creates a lot of that realization of, okay, here's what the feedback's talking about. Here's where we can drill down.
Yeah.
And gives that empathy. I'm curious also, Meagan, it's really fascinating that you were doing both the leading the CS team and doing product management as a founding PM. How did those roles, like obviously there would have been a lot of compliments to that, right? Because you're right in front of the customer and you're doing the PM work. But I'm also curious, was there any conflict that you found doing those roles and ways that maybe having that two-sided position may have been challenging?
I think it was challenging in the way that I was constantly hearing feedback from my CSMs and empathizing with their struggles on the side that there was clearly a need for us to fix problems that would help increase retention and reduce churn. And that directly impacted my CSM's morale and directly impacted their ability to upsell, cross-sell, and overall just improved user engagement, which all of these things tie into the product space as well.
Yeah.
However, on the flip side of that, I was at Lavender in this type of role in a very unique time where our Series B was our focus. And so with Series B being the focus, our goals were very revenue focused and very focused on retention in our R. And it was definitely focused on individual users as much as it was focused on our team's users, because we had different segments of users and our CSMs only supported our team's clients. And so although we were hearing these complaints, or I don't want to call it complaints, it was just like user feedback from those CSMs directly as their manager, I also had to take into account our individual users and their feedback and how that impacted our bottom line in order to achieve these NRR goals.
Yeah.
Which it felt very conflicting sometimes because these people, you care about them as their leader, but you also have to achieve these goals as a PM. Yeah. So it's just chicken and egg a little bit.
Yeah, that's the biggest conundrum for product, I would say. It's tough because I've been on those front lines, right? Customer support, you really don't get more frontline than that. And so I have a new appreciation now. Back then, because sometimes it can be frustrating as a CSM or as a customer support rep, hearing all this feedback and being like, well, okay, well, why aren't we doing anything about it? But there is so much that goes on behind the door of product that it's not as cut and dry anymore. The ruthless prioritization that has to happen for us and what we're trying to focus on and what we're trying to achieve, you have to make those kind of tough calls, right? And it's not always easy because not everyone's going to see eye to eye with it. They might have disagreements. There might be a little bit of tension, but ultimately it sometimes just does have to come down to that. And it's not necessarily like a, no, we're not doing that. It just might mean not now. It might just be in the future. Here's our lane of focus that we really need to be driving in right now. And can agree to disagree on some of that. But I think the collective just, all right, let me know.
It's going in the backlog.
Yeah,
Santi.
yeah, there it is.
Say
Yeah,
it
put it right
again.
in that backlog. Yeah, and I feel because every PM that at least I know, they want to be able to do everything in the grand scheme of product and just life in general. Unfortunately, we just can't do it all. So it's about driving the value on the things that we need to most importantly, and then continuing to assess what's next and what are we seeing, and just measuring, the whole product spiel that we do.
Yeah.
But it's important.
But it's true. It's a really important job as well. And I think that one of the questions that I got when I was interviewed at On the Goga was just like, what's your definition of a PM? And I think that it's just such a good question. And it was like a thoughtful question. And I had to pause and just like really think about what I think a PM is. And I feel like when I answered that question, it really just sat with me for a second, because I really see a PM as the organizational glue that holds the company together, because they rely on this relationship building within the company, and then the constant ability to communicate and collaborate within that organization to drive product goals and revenue goals and the business goals in general, which all roll up to product. So I think that the product role in general is just so special and so unique, because we just talk to everybody and we have relationships with everybody.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And I love chatting with my CSMs, because all the CSMs that I've ever worked with, they've been phenomenal. They want to see the product get better as well. And that's the other thing too. I was asked on a podcast recently, like how I handle folks when they're not on the same wavelength or whatever. One thing that I just keep in mind though, if we're having those conversations about what we think should be prioritized, I just keep in mind, everyone has the same goal in mind. We're all on the same team with the same goal. We all want to do great things and have the product do well and serve our customers. We all have that same goal. We just might have different opinions about how we think that can be achieved. But ultimately, everyone is phenomenal to work with. They have great ideas. I love eliciting that feedback from them and hearing their points of views and hearing what they're hearing from their customers and getting all that stuff. And like I said, as a PM, I wish I could do all of it. I really do. But like I said, with life in general, we just have to be like, okay, we've got all these data points. Let's see what's bubbling up and where we're going to place our bets and move forward. And like I said, all the people that I've worked with have been just nothing but phenomenal. They understand, they get it, and they just continue to help feed that so that we can work together on making the product as good as it can be. It's a beautiful relationship. I love it.
yeah. Is there anything like from your past that you feel like, anything work related as far as your past company history that you feel really aligns with your ability to be a good PM? And that could be literally anything. It could be retail.
That's a really good question. It really is my time in customer support, because I deeply understand our CX team and the needs that they have and the things that they're saying. I understand where it's coming from, the root of it. That's really helped me, again, with that empathy perspective, and also just knowing what that feedback can mean and how it can be utilized to its fullest. And from my time as a QA analyst, I really, really, really got to understand developers at a deeper level. And of course, that's crucial when you're working in a PM role. You have that relationship as well with your engineers. And I got a lot about how they work, like their preference. Everyone's different, but you kind of get a general sense of, how things go on that side of the house. And I got a much deeper appreciation for how software is built, especially testing something. Boy, so much goes into it. And that really helped me become more well-rounded on that front as a PM. And so I'm very, very grateful for the experiences that I've had. I regret none of them. I've learned so much from each role, and I will forever be blessed for that. And so I'm going to actually flip the question to you as well.
It's funny. I want to almost like copy your answer and say that customer support had a lot to do with it, because I truly believe the same, that the empathy that I developed from being in customer support truly allows me to understand the pain point if we start getting a bug, like a bug is flagged, right? Absolutely. And I'm like, I know how it feels to be on the front lines of that, and it hurts and it's annoying, and it like 1000%. Definitely drives like this feeling when you're there dealing with that. And I can empathize with that, both for internal employees as well as for the end user. And so I have both of that, that experience, which feels good. But I will say, for being a PM, I think my time as a customer adoption manager at Demio really, really allowed me to kick off to the next level, because it allowed me to become very data focused. And in that role, I really focused on adoption metrics for all of my customers. And with that, I built a lot of dashboards. I looked at a lot of data. I looked at events and built dashboards in Heap, and just really focused on what in the first 90 days can I do to improve the customer experience, lower the adoption time, and just like honed in on that. And I think that it really taught me on what the value of product analytics are and how you can utilize those in other roles. So I think that would probably be my answer.
I love that you said that because we glean so many insights from data. And I was actually just talking to my CX team today. We met with them and we love like every piece of feedback they give us, any stat they can give us, anything, we take it all in. I like to joke, I'm kind of like a data hoarder. I'm like, because it's so crucial and the insights we get from that, unmatched in the PM space. I actually also read a really good quote once on LinkedIn that stuck with me forever. It was, I believe the quote basically was, data is king, but context is queen. And I just loved it. Yeah. It was one of those ones I was like, that's getting burned in my brain.
I need a t-shirt with that. Right? I need like a t-shirt to walk around so people can be like, what does that mean? I'd be like, let me tell you.
Yeah, let me tell you about it, right? I mean, and it's crucial. So we can have on our side of the house, we might have product metrics and things that we're measuring in terms of numbers. And then we still get that qualitative piece from our own customer interviews, from our CX team, because they know the customer really well also, and just gather it all. I'm just, like I said, hoarding it. I'm like, bring it all in, right? Help us make the most informed decision we can, because we'll never have 100% of what we need to know this is the exact route we have to take, but we can get more info to help drive those bets and see where we're going to focus and bet our time on.
Yeah, for sure. I think data is so important. You know what I mean? And it's so crucial. I was just talking to someone about that today, about just like the time in between epics and how it's so crucial to gather a little bit of data before I make some changes and iterate a little bit, and how I just like to see a little bit of data, but sometimes we're strapped for time and we don't have a ton of data. So some assumption is necessary. Right. And we love data. And I think that data holds a special place in my heart, and the greater visibility I have into what a user is doing, why they're doing that, and how I can improve that experience is just always going to be so crucial to me. Yeah, I think it's great.
That's amazing.
I want to ask for you, because I feel like you always tell this story so much better than I do. How did this podcast begin?
This is such a great question, Megan. Thank you for this lovely question. So this podcast came to be quite literally because we were LinkedIn friends for so long. So a little context, a friend of mine was looking for a job, and I posted on my LinkedIn to my community and I said, hey folks, if anyone can drop any tips or any referrals or anything like that, please let me know. Megan, being the star that she is, she jumped in the comments and said, hey, I mentor job seekers, send her my way. So I made the connection. They had a great conversation. Also 10 out of 10 for Megan because she loved you. And I realized that Megan and I actually, even though we had been connected on LinkedIn for quite some time and we had interacted with each other's content constantly, we had never actually had the face-to-face. So we were like, let's do coffee. Let's just do coffee. And the moment we got on that call, it was just like two besties reunited after a long trip apart or something. Like it was just, wow.
To be.
Yeah. Literal bestie reunion, even though it was literally our first time meeting. So it was really good though. We hit it off really well. And we kind of realized our mutual love of wanting to help others through mentorship about product or job seeking, even just like sharing content to reach folks that might not be as active on LinkedIn, but still read. We just realized there was love there, and we took it to the DMs after, continuing the conversation a little bit. And I remember mentioning something about like, yeah, like I had this idea earlier. It started last year really, but I had mentioned, like, I think it'd be cool to do a podcast sometime. And Megan was like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to do this forever. We just kind of realized that 1, we like to help people. 2, we both want to do a podcast. And 3, we have the vibes for it. So
Bye.
That's the story of how we thought, let's do this. Let's just give her the old college try and build a podcast.
You always tell that story so much better than me. I feel like you're trying to tell a story. I'm like, we met on LinkedIn.
I slid into the DMs.
I feel like I never tell that story very well. You always tell it so well, and I feel like it just like really encompasses the vibes that we're going for.
Right.
And I feel you and I have such a passion for helping job seekers. And if this helps one person, we accomplished our goal. If we do one episode, if we do 50, if we do 1,000, I feel like we have accomplished our goal if we help one person. And overall, that's like our vibe.
That's it, literally it. I've even written this exact thing on LinkedIn, and that's how I knew we were so aligned, because we both have this mindset that at the root of what we're doing, if it helps one person, it was worth it. And we realized also, because we love helping people, we did notice that there is a gap in this space for having a resource kind of like this. So we thought, let's just create the resource. And like you said, it doesn't matter if we do 10 episodes, 50, 100, it's still a resource people can use as much as they want. And it's so special because it's really personal for us. It's very much like we want to help others, and it's very driven. It's not because we want like all this clout and all this like fame. It's quite literally to help other people. And I love that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one other thing that really stood out of a podcast for me back in 2018 when I thought about it, and now, is the goal to really get my thoughts out of a vacuum. And I think that you and I really had that same situation where you were helping job seekers on the phone. I was helping job seekers on the phone. And those conversations live in the 30-minute Zoom meeting that they exist in, and then they never get shared elsewhere. And I think that both of us are the same, where our content on LinkedIn isn't fully job seeker focused. We kind of both have a niche, but don't really have a niche. And we just like to share what we share.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one of us wanted to pivot our content where it was fully, here's how to land a role in product management, or here's my background in product management. I think we both just like to kind of keep things light on LinkedIn. And I think this allows us to really take those conversations that we have with other PMs and get it out of a vacuum and really just share those pieces of content with more people without sacrificing what we want to talk about on LinkedIn, without sacrificing being able to help job seekers, and then also just getting them out of this little 30-minute Zoom bubble.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I often would feel at the end of those Zoom calls, I'm like, yo, that was awesome. I got really good feedback from the person I was talking to, but those insights that I'm sharing are not being utilized to the full extent that they could be. It felt like I could be doing more with that. It's almost like when you go in to write a test and you kind of come out and you feel really good about it. You're like, yo, I just laid it down on that pen and paper and I'm feeling great. I'd come out of those calls feeling really good and being like, okay, what else? Like, there has to be more to this, right? Like, there has to be more that I can do on this front. And it was just that light bulb moment of a podcast. It was perfect.
I totally agree. And I think that just one I want to add in to this episode for those that listen to it and those that read the transcript, however you digest information, would be, this is going to be an ongoing resource that we're going to share, and we're going to have guests on it. And those guests are going to have other insights from their backgrounds in product. And I think that this podcast is going to be what you ask us to make of it. At the beginning, we're going to have some kickoff episodes about what we thought it should be, but overall, we would love to hear from you and what you want it to be. And that is what we will continue to create, because this is for job seekers. This is for people in product. It's not for the two of us. We're just here to try to get some thoughts and ideas out into the ether, and how we can do that and what we end up putting out there is based upon what we hear from those that are listening to it. And I think maybe we do some episodes on like how to land a job in product, or how to update your LinkedIn profile. I'm not really sure, but I think the only way we can really understand what you're looking for is if you talk to us and let us know.
Absolutely. And one last thing I'd like to note as well is there's not one right way to do any of this, right? All of our guests, us, we all have our own experiences. We all have our own journeys that we've lived through. What resonates with some might not resonate with others. Some might disagree with some things. Some might totally agree with some things. All this is really is just to get all of those different types of views and different journeys and experiences into one spot. Some advice that I received when I became a mom that I'm going to share now: take what will serve you, leave what won't. Piece of advice I got when I was becoming a mom, and it served me very well, both in motherhood and in my career. So this podcast, though, like Meagan said so beautifully, we really do want to make it as impactful and as valuable for the folks watching and listening in. It's like a product in itself, right? So we want to iterate on it. We want to make it enjoyable, a little bit funny, a little bit of vibes, and lots of insights into this space. And like I said, just get a wide variety of thoughts and opinions, and maybe think outside the box a little bit. Meagan, maybe you and I will have some newly formed opinions and thoughts after all this, right? Who knows? Every day's a school day, as my boss says. So
I completely agree with that. A couple of episodes we've already recorded have already made me think differently. And I think that's going to keep happening. So as much as this podcast is to help others learn and grow, I'm learning and growing. I love that about this. So like you said, every day's a school day.
Yep. Thank you, Neil. Shout out to Neil for that one.
Neil, that's twice you've gotten a shout out.
Neil, you're getting that's a shout out for boss man. But yeah, that's amazing, and I'm stoked. Also, we're gonna have to do blooper content too, like, because there's just too much humor in these episodes. Like, that would be wasted if it didn't make the light of day. So
I have one last question before we end this episode, and I am not willing to take this question back. So I just want to let you know this is a one-way question.
All right. Spicy.
Most controversial food.
Yeah.
You want to ask everyone else on this show what their most controversial food is, but and you want to take it back. Yeah.
I look them dead in their eye too. I'm like, what food do you like? You
take it back, Santi. You take it back.
I gotta eat from that plate. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this one's gonna be funny because I don't think many Americans know what this is, but you might. East Coast Americans maybe. Donair is like an Eastern Canada delicacy, so it's not controversial here that I like Donair. East Coast Canadians, a lot of us love it. It's just in our blood. It's controversial when folks from out of the East Coast come and try it. So Rachel, shout out to Rachel for trying the Donair sauce. She didn't like it, and that's fair. What it is, you have pita bread, and then you have shaved like beef with like Donair seasoning. It's just like it's a spice. And then you have onions and tomato cut up, spread on it. And then some folks do cheese, some don't. And then you have this Donair sauce, which is like a sweet kind of sauce that gets drizzled all over it. And I love it. A lot of folks that come from out of town do not. And they're like, how do you eat this? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, it is what it is. That's one. I've got a couple, okay? Like, I'm gonna drop some hints here. You're going to have to figure out if you want to continue watching the podcast after this. But that's one. The other one, ketchup and eggs. Fire. I love ketchup and eggs. Ketchup and scrambled eggs. Ketchup and fried eggs on sandwiches. It's my jam.
You lost me.
I know. I lose a lot of people with that one. So yeah, we can.
I love ketchup. Don't like eggs though. So that's where you lost me.
Back up. Did you just say you don't like eggs?
I don't like eggs. I like egg whites. I don't like eggs. I don't like the yellow ones. The yolks. So I don't like eggs. I'll eat eggs. Okay, so this is a difference. I don't like them. I will eat them. I had eggs this morning with my food, but I don't like them.
Sister, cut the recording. We need to talk about this. No.
There's something weird about the flavor. It's just overwhelming, and I'm not a fan. I can eat eggs if there's like something covering them, like cheese or meat. Otherwise, I can't eat eggs by themselves.
Oh, okay. Well, we're learning a lot about each other today on this episode. This is an eye-opener for all of us, really. Thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry that if you have to leave, you have to leave. I get it.
Sorry if you like eggs and Donair. Do any of the listeners like Donair? And if so, what part of Canada are you from?
And then also, like, shout out to anyone that likes eggs and ketchup. I'm with you. I'm
not.
Meagan's not.
This is one-sided.
This is one-sided. We appreciate everyone listening to the Product Pivot, and as always, please feel free to jump into the comments and leave some things that you want to hear us talk about. Tag guests you might want to have us feature. Drop it all in the comments below, and we will be happy to take a look and continue this conversation.
Thanks, everybody.